Friends, have you ever considered the role of imagination in experiencing the supernatural? Imagination and creativity form the basis of the supernatural. A glance at the ministry of Jesus makes this clear. Whether he was healing the sick, calming storms, or raising the dead, there was wonderful creativity behind many of his miracles. Jesus didn't just repeat the same old formulas. He moved with the power of the Holy Spirit, using his God-given imagination to bring about extraordinary breakthroughs. Can you imagine the scene? A wedding celebration full of joy and laughter suddenly faces a crisis. The wine, a symbol of joy and festivity, has run out. But Jesus steps in, his heart filled with compassion and a desire to bless. He doesn't simply replenish the wine. He transforms ordinary water into the finest wine, showcasing his divine creativity and boundless generosity. Picture this, a vast crowd, hungry and tired, gathered to hear Jesus teach. They are far from any town, and hunger sets in. With only 5 loaves of bread and 2 small fish, resources that seem utterly inadequate, Jesus takes this meager offering, blesses it, and begins to break it. He multiplies the food, showcasing his miraculous provision and reminding us that with God, all things are possible. A man blind from birth sits by the roadside, begging for alms. He has known nothing but darkness his entire life. Jesus stops, his heart filled with compassion. He mixes his own saliva with the dust of the ground, forming mud, and applies it to the blind man's eyes. Can you imagine the surprise, the curiosity, the glimmer of hope that must have stirred within the blind man's heart? This act of creative healing, using the most ordinary of elements, is a testament to God's power to make all things new. Chapter 4. Death, the ultimate enemy, had claimed Lazarus, a dear friend of Jesus. Grief and sorrow filled the hearts of those who loved him, yet Jesus, unmoved by the finality of death, approaches Lazarus's tomb. With a loud voice he cries out, "Lazarus, come forth!" and Lazarus, bound in grave clothes, emerges from the tomb alive. Chapter 5. The disciples, caught in a fierce storm on the Sea of Galilee, are terrified. Waves crash against their boat, threatening to engulf them. Suddenly they see Jesus walking towards them on the water. Fear gives way to astonishment as they witness this incredible display of power over nature. Jesus, the Prince of Peace, calms the storm in their hearts, reminding us that he is always with us, even in the midst of life's storms. Chapter 6. Imagine a man with a withered arm, his body bearing the mark of pain and limitation. He comes to Jesus, desperate for healing. With a touch and a word, Jesus restores the man's arm, making it whole and strong. Chapter 7. Strength to the paralytic. A man paralyzed and unable to move is brought to Jesus. He has been confined to his bed, his dreams and aspirations seemingly out of reach, but Jesus sees beyond the man's physical limitations. He speaks words of hope and faith, and the man finds the strength to rise to his feet and walk. Chapter 8. The disciples, sailing on the Sea of Galilee, encounter a raging storm. Fear grips their hearts as waves crash over their boat, threatening to sink them. They cry out to Jesus, who seems to be sleeping through it all. With a word, Jesus rebukes the wind and the waves. "Peace, be still," he commands. And instantly, the storm ceases, leaving behind a calm so profound it's almost eerie. Chapter 9. A man deaf and mute is brought to Jesus. He lives in a world of silence, unable to hear the sounds of life or communicate with others. Jesus takes the man aside, away from the crowds, and with a look of deep compassion, he touches the man's ears and tongue. The man's ears are opened, his tongue loosed, and he hears and speaks for the first time. Chapter 10. Leprosy, a dreaded disease in biblical times, left its victims not only physically scarred, but also socially isolated. One such man, covered in leprosy, approaches Jesus and falls at his feet, begging for healing. Jesus, moved with compassion, reaches out his hand and touches the man, something no one would dare to do. "Be cleansed," he says, and instantly the leprosy vanishes, and the man is made whole. Friends, as we reflect on these incredible miracles, we see a common thread: the power of faith and imagination. All these involved a free imagination and a spirit of creativity coupled, of course, with the faith that they could be done. It is clear that another essential ingredient of creativity is faith. If miracles are going to happen, our faith must also be developed. Jesus clearly said, "Have faith in God," Mark 11:22. To have a miracle-working faith, we must believe in a miracle-working God.